situation, then we'll shut it down. We control it. You move when I tell you to move. You talk to me when I want you to talk.
In the fall of 2017, a prison called McCormick in South Carolina was collapsing. The warden had left. Senior staff had left. Security officers were on extended medical leave. Frontline guards were vanishing. One day, 2 correctional officers showed up for roll call to work a facility holding almost 1,000 inmates. 2 officers, 1,000 convicted criminals. The inmates did whatever they wanted. 200 of them ignored their dorm assignments and moved into cells they chose for themselves. They took over the restrictive housing unit, the area designed to hold the most dangerous offenders in the building. Gangs ruled the yard. So, the state made a decision. They would transfer the worst inmates out of McCormick and send them to a nearby facility called Lee Correctional Institution. Gang leaders, troublemakers, men involved in disturbances, the worst of the worst, shipped down the road in buses. Lee's warden, Aaron Joyner, saw the list. He objected in writing. On October 23rd, he emailed his superiors. These were the worst inmates throughout the prison, he said, gang members with ties to the area. He asked them to remove the ringleaders from the transfer list. Do not put all of these inmates in the same prison so they can try to regroup. He was overruled. The transfers happened. The new arrivals claimed gang affiliations and rank. They brought old vendettas with them. They made deals on smuggled cell phones. They drank, smoked, and got high on ecstasy. Then they broke their windows and stripped the metal framing to fashion weapons. Officers heard them sharpening blades. Men were preparing for battle. On April 15th, 2018, it started. Rival gangs fought across multiple dormitories. Bloods chased inmates through buildings. Men climbed razor wire fences to escape. By morning, 7 inmates were dead and 22 were hospitalized. It was the deadliest prison riot in the United States in 25 years. The warden saw it coming. He put it in writing. He was overruled, and 7 men died. This is what happens when the people running the prison lose control of the gangs. And the truth that most people never hear is that in a maximum security prison, the gangs were never fully under control in the first place. To understand why wardens describe their job as managing a war, you need to understand who actually controls the building. The National Gang Intelligence Center estimates that 230,000 gang members are incarcerated in American federal and state prisons right now. That is more than the entire population of cities like Richmond, Virginia, or Boise, Idaho. Across the country, approximately 30,000 gangs with 850,000 members operate on the streets, and they cycle in and out of the prison system constantly. In Georgia alone, the Department of Corrections has validated over 12,000 inmates belonging to 315 different gangs in one state. Correctional systems have a formal name for these organizations. They call them security threat groups. But everyone inside the walls just calls them what they are, gangs. And 70% of all prison gang members in the country are concentrated in just 2 states, California and Texas. The organizations that run maximum security prisons from the inside are not loose crews. They are structured enterprises with decades of history. The Mexican Mafia, known as La IME, formed in 1956 inside a California prison and controls the Serrano Street gangs, including MS-13 and 18th Street. An anonymous correctional officer once described La Amy's power with a sentence that has never been improved upon. The Mexican mafia runs the prison. We are just referees. Nuestra Familia controls Northern California and has been at war with La Amy for half a century. The Aryan Brotherhood formed in San Quentin in 1964. According to FBI estimates, it represents less than 1% of the total prison population, but is responsible for more than 20% of all prison murders. The Black Guerrilla family was founded in 1966 by former Black Panther George L. Jackson. And in Texas, organizations like the Texas Syndicate and Tango Blast operate with paramilitary structures, generals commanding 5 regions of the state. These gangs maintain constitutions. They have formal hierarchies with shot callers at the top, lieutenants running daily operations, and soldiers enforcing the rules. They hold internal courts to resolve disputes between members. Membership is governed by the principle of blood in, blood out. You earn your way in through violence, and the only way out is death. Race is the primary organizing principle. The yard, the dining hall, the bunks, all of it divided along racial gang lines. An inmate at California Correctional Institution named Steve Sekala, 38 years old, serving time for drug possession, described the reality plainly. If some guys up there at level 3 or level 4 found out that you bunked up with another race, who knows? You could get stabbed up. That is not a threat from the administration. That is the law of a system that predates every warden currently working in corrections. So how does a warden actually manage a building where the inmates have their own government? Every housing decision is a gang management decision. Which inmate goes into which cell block, which bunk, which dorm, every single placement is a calculation about which gangs are present, which rivalries are active, and which alliances are holding. For decades, California assigned inmates of the same race to bunk together specifically to keep the peace among race-based prison gangs. Then, in 2005, the United States Supreme Court effectively ruled that practice unconstitutional. Officials began desegregating prison housing, but at some high-security facilities, half the population was ineligible for integrated housing because of gang involvement or a history of interracial violence. Inmates who refused their new housing assignments faced solitary confinement. The warden's housing decisions are not administrative paperwork. They are life-and-death chess moves made every day with incomplete information. The recreation yard is where those decisions are tested. Every yard in a maximum security prison is divided by invisible boundaries that are not on any map, but that every person in the building knows by heart. Each racial group and each gang claims territory. The warden reads the yard the way a general reads a battlefield. Who is standing where? Who is missing? Who moved? Who is talking to someone they do not normally talk to? When a group clusters in an unusual pattern, it signals that something is about to happen. When the yard goes quiet in a way that is not normal, the warden knows before any report is filed. The dining hall is one of the most dangerous spaces in the building because it forces rival groups into proximity with access to metal utensils. In the Federal Bureau of Prisons, wardens follow a tradition called standing mainline, where the heads of departments make themselves available in or directly outside the chow hall during the noon meal to be directly approached by inmates. Inmates eat with their racial group or gang associates. Lower-ranking members give up food items to higher-ranking members when ordered. Staff monitor seating patterns, watch for hand signals, and pay attention to who is not eating. because a missed meal can mean a hunger strike, a planned attack, or someone who knows violence is coming and does not want to be in the room when it starts. And then there is the transfer game. Wardens use transfers to break up gang concentrations, moving leaders to different facilities to disrupt command structures. But this can backfire catastrophically, because transferring a gang leader does not remove their authority. It seeds a new facility with an established command structure. Lee Correctional is the proof. Warden Joyner explicitly warned against grouping the ringleaders together. He asked to separate them and move a few at a time. He was overruled and 7 people died in one night. But the warden's most important weapon is not force. It is information. Every correctional system in the country maintains a dedicated intelligence operation focused on gangs. These are called security threat group units. The investigators are usually correctional lieutenants selected by their wardens. Their job is to monitor everything: mail, phone calls, coded messages, tattoos, symbols, hand signs, graffiti, cell contents, visitor patterns, and financial transactions. They decode elaborate cryptic communications that gangs use to pass orders between yards, between prisons, and between the inside and the outside. They develop confidential informants among inmates who want out. They share intelligence across facilities and with external law enforcement. Georgia's STG unit maintains a database covering over 12,000 validated gang members in 315 gangs. California's Department of Corrections uses a formal validation process with a point-based scoring system. It takes at least 3 independent source items to validate an inmate as a gang member, and at least one must be a direct link to a current or former validated member. When this intelligence works, it saves lives. In Florida, a correctional officer was escorting 2 inmates when other inmates approached her with a warning. She was told, "You are going to be real sick tomorrow, and you will not be able to make it on the compound." She reported it immediately. Middle management launched an investigation and uncovered plans for a gang riot over owed drug money. The facility was locked down before anything happened. Violence prevented. That is what functioning intelligence looks like. Inmates warning staff, staff reporting up the chain, and leadership acting before blood is spilled. But the intelligence is always working against the scale of what the gangs are doing. Drug trafficking is the primary revenue engine, with distribution networks operating inside and outside the walls simultaneously. Non-gang inmates are extorted through protection rackets and commissary taxes. Weapons are manufactured from anything available: broken windows, metal bed frames, sharpened plastic. Communication with outside networks runs through smuggled cell phones, coded letters, and complicit visitors. Drones now deliver contraband directly over prison fences. Wardens must defend against aerial threats that did not exist 10 years ago. And contract killings are ordered from inside the prison by shot callers who issue what are known as green lights, authorized hits carried out on the street or inside other facilities. And sometimes the staff is part of the operation. Some correctional officers assist prison gangs directly, smuggling drugs, cell phones, and contraband in exchange for money, sex, or protection. A former Texas prison warden described it bluntly. A lot of these gang members really have the guards under their thumbs. At Corcoran State Prison in California, between 1989 and 1994, guards in the secure housing unit staged fights. They placed members of rival Black and Latino gangs into the same exercise yard and watched them fight. They bet on the outcomes. When they wanted to end the fights, they used pepper spray, wooden block guns, and lethal firearms loaded with live ammunition. 7 prisoners were shot dead and 43 more were injured. When guards turned whistleblower, 8 officers were tried. Everyone was acquitted. Their defense was simple. They had followed policy. And in 2019, smuggled cell phone videos from Soledad Prison in California showed the same thing happening again. Rival gangs fighting in gladiator-style combat, while guards stood by and watched. And when the intelligence fails, or when the system itself creates the violence, the warden faces the worst-case scenario. Lee Correctional was not a single failure. It was a cascade. McCormick Prison had a 60% officer vacancy rate. Staff fled. Gangs filled the vacuum. The state responded by transferring the most dangerous inmates to Lee, grouping gang leaders together against the warden's explicit objection. The new arrivals destabilized the existing order. The contraband team at Lee was down to 3 active members who were constantly reassigned to other duties to fill staffing gaps. In November 2017, 1 inmate was killed. In February, another. In March, inmates in the restrictive housing unit took an officer hostage. Every one of those incidents was a red flag. Everyone was either absorbed or ignored at the system level. Then on April 15th, the yard exploded. The same pattern played out in Texas decades earlier. Before 1980, Texas prisons used a system of building tenders, trusted inmates given authority by wardens to maintain order. Gangs were small and disorganized. Then a massive prison conditions lawsuit called Ruiz versus Estelle forced the state to dismantle the building tender system along with the old methods of inmate control. The result was a power vacuum. Gangs divided along racial and ethnic lines and fought for control of the territory the building tenders had abandoned. Texas prison administrators witnessed more murders and stabbings in 2 years than the system had seen in the previous 20. The Texas Syndicate and the Mexican Mafia exploded in size. A simultaneous court order to racially integrate prison cells added more fuel. The lesson was clear. When you remove the system that manages gang power without replacing it with something else, the gangs fill the void. And they fill it with blood. Perhaps the most revealing case came from Pelican Bay State Prison in California. In 2012, leaders of rival gangs inside the most secure housing unit in the state drafted an unprecedented document called the Agreement to End Hostilities. The people the system had identified as the most dangerous inmates in California were asking for the violence to stop. They were trying to make peace. The prison system largely ignored it. Officials continued implementing selective lockdowns that stripped prisoners of commissary, visitation, and basic supplies like toothpaste and toilet paper. More riots followed, more violence, more deaths. The gangs tried to end the war. The institution would not let them. So here is the position the warden is actually in. The warden cannot eliminate gangs. There are 230,000 incarcerated gang members and 315 gangs in a single state. The warden cannot freely integrate housing. Half the high-security population is ineligible because of gang-related violence. The warden cannot isolate every gang leader. 83% of wardens surveyed endorsed restrictive housing for gang leaders. but solitary confinement is increasingly restricted by law and litigation. The warden cannot stop contraband. Staffing shortages mean contraband teams get reassigned, drones fly over fences, and guards are bribed. The warden cannot always trust their own staff. And when the warden objects in writing to decisions that will get people killed, they can be overruled. What the warden actually does is manage a power balance between organizations they cannot destroy, cannot fully monitor, and cannot negotiate with openly. They make housing decisions that are life and death calculations. They rely on intelligence that is always incomplete. They maintain the illusion of control in a building where the real governance is racial, hierarchical, and enforced with homemade weapons. They stand in the chow hall during the noon meal while shot callers eat at tables they claimed by force, and they go home knowing the balance could break at any moment, and that when it does, the warden is the one who answers for it. The anonymous guard was right. The Mexican mafia runs the prison. We are just referees. The warden's job is not to run the building. It is to prevent the organizations that actually run it from going to war. And when they go to war anyway, the warden is the one who answers the phone. So, here is what nobody tells you about maximum security prisons. The public thinks the warden runs the building. Inside the walls, the shot callers decide who eats where, who sleeps where, and who gets hurt. The public thinks gangs are a problem to be solved. Inside the walls, gangs are the social order, and removing them creates a vacuum that fills with worse violence. The public thinks the guards control the facility. Inside the walls, some guards work for the gangs. The warden stands between all of it, making decisions that could start a riot, reading intelligence that is never complete, managing a staff that is never large enough, and knowing that when 7 men die in a single night, the question will not be what went wrong with the gang system that has operated for 70 years. The question will be what the warden did wrong. Nobody runs a maximum security prison. The warden just tries to keep it from running off the rails, and some nights the rails do not hold. If this changed the way you think about who actually controls what happens inside America's prisons, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what we cover next. Tell us in the comments, who really runs the prison, the warden or the gangs?